Now, there's been quite a lot of obviously concern about the sort of the finger pointing at Novak Djokovic as an anti-vaxxer, not just opposed to the COVID vaccine. He's been very open about that, although he's never told us whether he's had his jabs or not. I think we can safely say he has not, but against other vaccines as well. But there are big question marks about whether he'd be able to go into Australia. All of the battles we've seen this week, him winning his appeal in court on Monday, but we've still got the prospect of the Australian Immigration Minister withdrawing the right for him to stay and cancelling his visa. But there have been numerous developments in the last 24 hours involving not just his self-isolation after testing positive for COVID, he claims, on the 16th of December, but also his health declaration form on arriving in Australia. Tell us the latest on all of that.
Well, Novak Djokovic has been under huge pressure to clarify the timeline of when exactly he tested positive, and hence to clarify whether he was even eligible to enter the country. What's emerged overnight is he's put out a statement saying that he did indeed mix with lots of children in Belgrade on the 16th of December. He then found out that he was positive. But probably the most controversial aspect is that he then conducted an interview with L'Equipe in Belgrade, saying he didn't want to let the journalist down, knowing that he was positive for COVID. And so that will go down extremely badly, I think, among his fans and critics alike.
Yeah. But that's not a matter of judgment, is it? I mean, at the end of the day, the law in Serbia, where he was that you had to isolate for 14 days, not make a decision about whether you let people down or not.
Yes, exactly. I mean, his judgment throughout this has been questionable. I mean, I think particularly in the fact that he's put this statement out at all. If I was advising him, I think I would say nothing until the immigration minister makes his decision on whether you're going to be deported or not.
Yeah, indeed. And again, we see all those, when he claimed he tested positive on the 16th, and we saw all those photographs since. He says, he didn't actually have his PCR result back by that time. But what's interesting, again, we still got the issue that other tennis players pointing out that the deadline for claiming an exemption was the 10th of December. Well, that was 6 days before he claims it, and yet he's already applied for his exemption. How could you apply for an exemption for having had COVID when you hadn't yet had it?
Yeah, it's a very good question. I mean, there's so much confusion between the rules as set by Tennis Australia and the rules as demanded by the federal government. And no one party seems to have talked to another. I mean, equally the Victorian state government. I mean, there was an exchange of correspondence from the federal government to Tennis Australia clarifying that Novak Djokovic's prior COVID infection wouldn't be accepted as grounds for a medical exemption. And that correspondence was apparently never seen.
Yeah, so what I can't work out is how he was even able to get on a plane if he tested positive then. But there we are. There's a lot of confusion about him being in Spain. His home is officially in Monaco and Belgrade. Now, I can imagine, unlike most of us who can remember when we travel, because I do it quite a lot compared to most people, but nothing like what these tennis players do who probably, is it Wednesday, which country are we in, sort of levels of travelling. But his health declaration form was filled out by his agent, apparently. Now, the thing is, at the end of the day, you have to declare at the end of these forms, whether you're signing it yourself in person or you're actually pressing the send button, you have to tick a declaration box saying everything here is true. I would think his agent would know where he had been. He would certainly know where he'd been. You have a legal duty to make sure that information is correct. On those grounds alone, the immigration minister in Australia, if so minded, can cancel his visa. And frankly, I'm not sure anyone's got would have any good grounds to question that.
Yeah, I mean, the longer this goes on, the view here is the more likely it is that he's going to be deported, because the sheer accumulation of facts against him. I mean, as you say, it's one of the strange elements of being very rich and famous in sport, that you delegate an awful lot of things that you should take care of yourself, one of which being filling out a travel declaration correctly, particularly in a place like Australia, who regard it as a sacred document, really. And if he's made an error, or if his agent has made an intentional error, that could have very serious consequences for him. I mean, not least in the fact that cancelling a visa could mean he's barred from Australia for 3 years, and then hence loses 3 opportunities to add to his Grand Slam haul.
Yeah, indeed. I mean, the implications of this are very good. What is the delay, though? The immigration minister, we were told as soon as we had that court judgment on Monday, and that was about this, how he was treated as he arrived in Australia. It was very much about a processology story, wasn't it? But the immigration minister, we heard from the court, no, they could still have cancelled that visa. If they were going to cancel it, I mean, we are 2 days on now. Why have they not done so yet? Do you think they want all this other information to come out first? Or, because it would seem a bit cruel to sort of have him there, basically trying to keep in shape and training for the Australian Open starting on Monday, and then to pull his visa on, say, Friday or Sunday.
Well, I don't think it's a question of just the information, Julia. I mean, the issue with this, and it has been all along, is that it's so intensely political. Yeah. And for Scott Morrison clearly would like nothing better than to sling Djokovic out of the country. But there are an increasing number of commentaries here that suggest that to do so would look petty and vindictive, and that Morrison was just using Djokovic as a political football. I mean, for what it's worth, I think there is some merit in that argument, given that it was only a matter of minutes after Djokovic's visa was cancelled last Thursday that Morrison put out a statement saying rules are rules.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
It's very different. And in terms of the mood in Australia, we're hearing quite varying different stories about this, because we've got the outcry from all the people saying, we've obeyed all the rules, this man's a terrible, terrible risk to us. But there's an awful lot of Australians, we know those who've been protesting week after week after week, who've been protesting, in places like Melbourne, where the Australian Open's held 250 days of lockdown, incredibly draconian rules. Northern Territory, people unable, if they're unjabbed, to even leave their homes for exercise or to go to work. There are an increasing number of Australians who are fighting back against this. So do you think that Novak Djokovic, if he does play, would he be cheered to the rafters? Would he be booed? Is it a mixed reaction?
I think it will be quite a toxic tournament if he turns up. I mean, there have been problems before at the Australian Open. I mean, 150 Serbs and Croats were thrown out in 2007 for fighting. This is a different issue, but you see how passionate the Serbian community in Melbourne is. They came out on the streets, hundreds of them, on Monday night to protest against the federal government's treatment of him. So I think it could be a tinderbox atmosphere, and there are talks about beefing up the private security around him, because there's no doubt that there's a huge amount of resentment in Melbourne. It's a strange atmosphere in Melbourne. You can tell that it's a place that's had 250 days of lockdown. There's lots of businesses boarded up. I've been here several times before, and it lacks its usual vibrancy, and people regard it as an absolute article of faith that you get vaccinated, and they can't seem to comprehend how he's made this judgment for his own health reasons, and he is just immediately labelled a poster boy for the anti-vax movement.
Indeed. It's going to be absolutely fascinating to see what does happen over the coming days.